Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Namaste Center in Hendersonville, North Carolina. This is a wonderful day for us. We are here on March 18th, 2012, and we're blessed to have one of the leading teachers in the world today who's really offering a solution to all of the perceived challenges that the world faces today. And Howard Martin here, who is, we're going to have a discussion here, he has literally been a pioneer in finding and starting and pioneering in creating the HeartMath solution and also the Global Coherence Initiative. And with those two organizations, they've literally made this understandable and adaptable, not only in the maybe metaphysical, New Age, spiritual communities, but taken this very scientific-based information into all kinds of corporations, into the military, the governments, and beyond that, school systems. And it literally has, as a tool that's going to transform our world. Not going to, it already is. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Howard Martin to the group here today.
Thank you, Carol, for having me, and I think we all need to acknowledge her courage to actually turn me loose on a church group on a Sunday morning.
That's right, exactly. And I am Charlotte, but that's okay. I'll go by Carol. Carol, do you want to come up here and take some? Carol over here.
Well, it all depends on what your state you're in. You can use, like, different names, different places.
That's all good.
Where's that juice that lady was going to bring me?
That's right.
I need a drink of water, but I got to hide my bottle.
So Howard, it's so wonderful. It's been a great weekend, and for those of you that don't know this, Howard is here today to do a seminar later, but what we're really here to focus on is the work that he does. And he came here with Greg Braden, who did a Friday night and all-day Saturday seminar, that of which Howard shared yesterday a bit of his HeartMath information and the Global Coherence information. And so today we have the pleasure of introducing everyone here to Howard and more of his work and more of the ideas that he has actually cultivated and shares with the world. So it's a wonderful time to be alive, Howard.
It sure is.
Yes, it is. So I know that we wanted to talk, well, what the heck is up on planet Earth, and what's this shift all about, in your opinion?
Shift?
Make sure you get that F.
I've heard of that. So obviously everybody in this room has been probably heard about the shift for a very long time. I remember being on a stage in like 2001 or 2 or something, and the moderator says, let's get this out of the way right now. There is a shift. We don't need to talk about that. Now let's talk about this. So it's been going on a long time with this awareness of changing times that we live in. Certain time frames wrapped around those that have designations of certain points along the way within the change. So people often ask me, what do you think the shift's going to be? What's it going to be like? And I get asked this on radio shows and interviews and things all the time. Tell me what the shift's going to be. And I've gotten really good at crafting an answer for that. My answer is simple. I don't know. But the reason I don't know is interesting in that the shift that we're involved in now is something we've never seen before in the history of our world. And what's going to come after this is going to be something we've never seen before in the history of the world. So an analogy might be if you walked up to someone in the late 1800s sitting on their horse and buggy and you said, you know what, I know that there's new transportation systems that will be coming in, to our world scene. That person sitting on a horse and buggy, the best they could probably do would be to try to imagine a better buggy or a different horse. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't see the airline industry from there. You can't see those things from that bandwidth of intelligence perspective. So that's kind of where we are now. Our tendency is to try to take what we have today and put new clothes on it and characterize that as a shift. Because we can't see around the corner yet. We sense it, we sort of feel it in a certain way, we smell it in a certain way, but we can't really put context around it all. And so that's interesting, interesting time period to be living in where we sense these things, but we don't know what's going to happen. Now, there's an upside and a downside to that, of course. I mean, there are things taking place in the world today that are accelerating, obvious examples of accelerated change. Most of that we see now in that context is chaos, chaotic events. You know, we see that all of our major systems we've relied upon as foundational pieces, you know, for our security, for our understanding of life, all seem to be in a state of chaos, fluctuation, and in many cases dysfunction. That can be everything from our medical system to our legal system, educational systems, governmental systems, name it. You know, you can see that they're all under stress. They don't seem to be working well at all. And that's just one example. If we look across the landscape of world events, we see so many things going on that are just crazy. You know, you just can't even put our minds around how this could possibly be. And all this sort of information that we're getting, and getting it at super high speed through the advancements in our communication systems, are creating an overload in many people, you know, of the change. That, combined with the fact that we can't see around the corner, produces uncertainty. And within uncertainty comes anxiety and anxiousness and angst and fear and all these different things. So I think the compassionate view that we need to take around this is that everyone's in this. We're all going through this as a global society, and that many people don't have the understanding that, say, a group like you would. And that we need to suspend judgment as best we can and have more and more compassion for what people are going through, because they're in flux right now, right down to their own energetic systems in their bodies and in their emotional states and in their spiritual consciousness, all just fluctuating like, you know, faster vibratory rates than ever before. And so compassion is more important now than ever before to help ease things through in this next cycle of time, as Greg would call it, you know, as we're going to this next place in existence. So the same energetic momentum that's driving this chaos that we can clearly see is also driving the ability to change and grow and to advance spiritually more than we ever have before us since we've been human beings. We can take on new levels of spiritual growth and advancement faster now and more dynamically now than ever before. That again will go past what we think. You know, we can't put a label on it yet. It's not just that we're doing what we do now, but we do it better. There's something new waiting for us all as we go through these changing times. But I think there's some misperceptions about the shift as well. And I think some of those are conscious and some of them are subconscious, you know. And it's like you take the year we're in right now, you mentioned here we are in March of 18th, is that what the date is? Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay, Mom.
2012, and to 2012 because of the Mayan calendar prophecies and the cycles of time, things that Greg talked about, the end of, you know, world cycles and all that, it's getting marked as this big year that where everything's going to change, right? And so most people would say, well, no, I understand it's not going to all be one big change or whatever, but yet there's this anticipation that something big's going to happen, that we're going to see this massive change at a certain point in time. It's okay to feel that way, but I think we have to be sober about this. I think we have to look at this in a pragmatic and practical way. If Greg is right and these cycles of time are what's marking it, and the Mayan people were right about it all, it's still a 5,125-year cycle. That's a long time. So it isn't like it just, we get down to the 21st of this year and all of a sudden, boom, the cycle's over, here's a new one. You know, everything's changed. You know, there's time before and time after preceding these kind of things. It takes time for things to unfold. And this is, you know, if it's another 100 years, it's still a really short amount of time, you know, for a major transition to occur around a certain point in time where things, you know, have been marked, you know, for major change. So I think we have to be sober about that we're not going to wake up on the 22nd, you know, and everything's going to be completely different. Now, the other side of that, however, is within our lifetime, we already are, and we will continue to see more than evidence that there's a new world emerging in the midst of the old. The way I see it sometimes is that, you know, there is a new world. It's just operating within the same sort of, we're on the same chunk of dirt, you know, but there's a new consciousness, a new world that's operating almost as two dimensions operating in the same space, you know, and the new world is pushing out against the edges of the old one. The old one's been here for a long time, and it's not wrong or anything. It's got its own checkpoints and rightness built into it, so it's pushing back, you know. So you have the new pushing out, the old pushing back, and that's that tension that we feel, energetic. And the new one will eventually, you know, move through, and there will be a new world, but it's going to take some time, and we have some interesting road to walk down, you know, during the course of this transitional era. Another analogy for where we are, I think, today is you know how when a thunderstorm comes up, it could just, all of a sudden things change and it's a thunderstorm and it's wind, it's rain, it's lightning and all that. And it looks like, oh my God, the house is going to blow down. And it's, you know, trees are going to blow over my yard and all that. But it goes through pretty quick usually, a thunderstorm does. And when it goes through after that, there's always this sort of sparkle in the air. You know, there's like a freshness in the air. You know, there's the light's different. And the little water drops on the bushes and the trees and everything have a glistening to them, you know, and it just looks like, wow, that was then, this is now, that was pretty quick, and you know, here we are, and it's much more beautiful than it was before we had the thunderstorm, you know. And that's kind of what's happening. Right now we're in thunderstorm phase, you know, but it doesn't mean that that can't blow through relatively quickly, and when it does, there'll be a freshness to everything that we have never seen before as a global society.
Well, I like your optimism, and I choose to be in that space as well. So I know that actually the roots of your organization, HeartMath and Global Coherence Initiative, were founded here in North Carolina, and then you all moved west, took the truck out to Beverly Hills, like the, and
well, we live in Boulder Creek, California. So sometimes I'll sing them a song. So we loaded up a truck and we moved to Boulder Creek. We got out there and, you know, it's like, hey y'all, hey boss. You know, it's happening in Hoss and all that. You know. They were like, what in the world's happened to our town? You know.
So tell us about HeartMath and how it originated and what you all are doing.
Back, you know, many years ago now, over 40 years ago, in eastern North Carolina, there was just a handful of people, most that came out of college or whatever, that began to be interested in spiritual things. You know, we all read Autobiography of the Yogi. Not that anybody here, you know, read that book, but you know, and began to look at different things and try meditation. And some of us turned into vegetarians, and all that sort of stuff was going on. You know, way back then, in the early '70s, and there was a guy that I met named Doc Childry. He was a pretty amazing guy. I didn't necessarily resonate with him at first. He was only 4 years older than me, but you could tell he carried an awareness that was really very different than mine, and certainly embraced mine. And he would talk to me about things, and I remember I would say things to myself like, I'm not sure I like this guy. He's making too much sense. Young and arrogant like I was, you know what I mean? But Doc was a wonderful man, and he has a unique awareness, and what underlies his awareness, I think, more than anything, is this deep care, this consistent care for people at just really refined levels. It's been that way the whole time I've ever known him. But we began to study various things together, and we would, you know, read a book and try out what was in it, right? You know, and really put our hearts into it and really go for it, and see what was there, whether it was, you know, a meditation thing or a G for Alice Bailey teachings or any of that stuff. We'd dig right in on it and like go for it and find out what was there. Like Doc would say, we're going to date this for a while. We're not going to marry any of it. We'll dig in and check it out. You know what I mean? So we did. And through that process, we became really bonded in friendship, you know, in deep friendship. So we chose to begin to build our lives around that and to work together and to meet all the time and to pursue these things and to challenge ourselves and to compare notes and to challenge each other. And you know, we did this for a very long time. And Doc was, you know, was directing all that, and he was such a bottom line guy. It was first things first. He had no glamour, no intention to form an organization, no intention to write anything down, no intention to do any of that. We were just trying to do the work, right? And we were in eastern North Carolina, back in Goldsboro, Wilson area, back there. And back in those days, there wasn't any of the spiritual movement going on. We were pretty much in isolation. We had to drive all the way to Washington, D.C. to Yes Books to buy books. And we would save our money and drive up there and spend all day in that bookstore and bring back some books and decide what we were going to date, you know. And so and of course life went through a lot of different things. We won't get into all the details, but that process was over 15 years. And people that we met in California through their books, you know, and things like that, began to associate with us and with Doc, and they had an organization, and it was a consciousness university, and they had businesses. They were the people that introduced spirulina. They were the ones that did that, and they wrote books and things, and they became friends, and they would come and visit, and they would look at us, and they'd see something in us that they didn't see in themselves, really, in a certain way. They'd grown, and they had a lot of more sophistication than we did, and they had serious awareness and commitment. You know, they really had all of that, but there was an essence piece that seemed to be missing, that we were kind of like hanging out in the swamps and stuff, you know, that had that essence mix without sophistication, you know what I mean? So they kept encouraging and Doc to write down, to organize something around what he had determined and what we had discovered over 15 years. And awareness had changed dramatically in us over 15 years, many, many ways in which that had manifested in our own lives. So there's a lot that had gone on there. And so after a period of several years of back and forth with that, Doc did make a decision that we would form an organization of some kind, and we would do it in California, because we go visit them too. And they were in this town of Boulder Creek where we live, where they had their place. And so they shut down their other businesses, they got out of the spirulina business, did all that, had some properties that were there. Some of us who've been doing this in North Carolina decided we would make a lifestyle change and move, so we sold whatever we had, and we didn't have a lot really. Sold all that, loaded up the truck, moved to Boulder Creek, and we started what became HeartMath. We had no business plan, we had no financial investment. You know, we had belief, we had commitment, and we began to try to figure out what have we learned. What can be put into a system of some kind that can be then shared with others. So it started out small, started out with Doc writing some books, things like that. First book was for teenagers. He went right straight to the youth. It was a book called The How-To Guide for Teen Self-Discovery, his first book. And it attracted attention from the educators and things like that. And then they said, well, you know, can you train us? And we were going, I don't know. And we eventually put together training programs. We started doing scientific research early on, because by then we had determined a long time ago from the Carolina experience, we got an uncharted water many years before HeartMath. We didn't have to go to ES Books anymore. We were pretty much, you know, finding it on the inside out, and it was heart-centric in nature. So we knew that the system we wanted to introduce was about that, but we knew we couldn't do it in the same way that heart had been introduced for thousands of years, because it had reached the ceiling. And heart was respected and honored and, you know, and quoted and all that, but when it came down to daily life, it usually got left out of the picture, you know, and so we knew we had to give it a bottom line. So we started doing scientific research. We wanted to understand if this intelligence that we'd experienced in ourselves could be mapped out. Was there something going on inside the body that we could show? And of course, I'll share more about that in my afternoon presentation, but we found that there was, in fact, a lot of information about the heart being more than a blood pump, and about it being an information processing system. Little pieces of research here, little pieces of research there, scattered through the research literature that nobody was really aware of. Our researchers brilliantly took all of that, did our own research, took the research that they could find available, and they put together a story. It's become the story of coherence. You look at the genesis of heart and heart coherence, all that, it goes back to Boulder Creek. It's popular now, it's all over the place, all over the world really, and there's training programs in Europe and everything on heart coherence, and companies over there doing it and all of that, but when you trace it back, where did it start?
So it started here and moved out there, and I was amazed when you told me you all have a 150-acre facility and you employ over 100 people.
We do.
Wow, that's amazing.
We operate in 85 countries today. It's grown into, you know, it's 3 organizations. Our nonprofits still exist. They do the scientific research. They also serve the underserved market, which would be, you know, people that, you know, that come do social service agencies, things like that. They do education. But, you know, primary school and university education programs for teachers and staff, and a lot of resources for kids and all that. And they're the ones that are doing the military on the training side. But out of that sprung 2 for-profit companies. And so we do all the product manufacturing, development, technology licensing, product distribution, training programs, and all the for-profit companies, the certification programs for people to become HeartMath coaches, and it goes on, you know. So it's gotten really big and very complex between 3 organizations trying to handle all that. We're in multiple markets at the same time, and we have investors and all kinds of things that are a part of this now. So my role has changed a lot over the years. As executive vice president, I have to be involved in both. I have to be involved in all those business type things, and take a, you know, have to sit every Friday morning and stare at Excel spreadsheets, you know what I mean, on the screen, you know, looking at all the numbers and all the things that are going on. And I also handle all the international licensing that we do. Take HeartMath around the world, that's under me. All program and product development is under me, you know. And also I'm running what's called the Heart Mastery program now, which is our online learning program for individuals, where you go to Heart University in a sense. You know, go through a whole year of courses with us, which we had never had before. We're doing it in smaller chunks.
Well, so how can HeartMath help people?
Well, the way it's helped me is I overcame a malady that was plaguing me for years. I was too good looking for my height. HeartMath helps people in many, many different ways. There are obviously, mental and emotional and physical benefits that would all be together in that. There's a lot of health benefits to HeartMath. That you see that reflected through how many health professionals use HeartMath. Mental health professionals, people that treat a lot of various diseases and maladies and things. I think that the biggest benefit to it, it gives us the ability to regulate our emotions, and I'll talk more about that today. But regulating emotion is one of the keys to this whole shift thing. It's a piece that we have to take another level on as in our evolutionary process. And the intelligence of the heart gives us the ability to do that. But in corporations, we position it all very differently. I mean, you mentioned it, I think, yesterday when you were introducing me. It's like we train a lot in hospitals, for example. Large healthcare institutions is one of our major training markets. And their reason for bringing us in is it can be one of two things. One is they want to reduce the stress in their workforce, not because they're altruistic and we have a stressed workforce, we need to help them, and that's in there. But the business reason is to reduce the turnover in the nursing staff. Mm-hmm. So it's a cost-related, ROI-driven process. If we can come in, we'll train these people. We're not going to change pay scales. We're not going to change work hours. We're not going to change managers. What we're going to change is behavior, and we're going to change their perception. We're going to give them tools and skills to deal with the work hours, the manager, and the pay scale. And as a result of that, they're going to be happier about where they work, and they're going to stick around, and you're going to save money because it costs this much to replace them. And we have data that supports the effectiveness of all that. That's just one example of how we cast this. So yeah, we're teaching them about heart. We're not trying to be stealthy about it, but I'm not going to go in there and talk about spirit merging with humans. I'm not going to talk about universal source and its implications on the productivity of their workforce. It's going to be positioned in a different way. Same with the military, the language that's appropriate. So it isn't a stealthy, hiding something kind of an approach. It's based upon care. How do you communicate with people so that they understand it? How do you communicate with people so that they get it from where they're coming from and it contextualizes and makes sense to them? And so we craft it different ways for that. So from the personal growth side, the spiritual growth side, I've pretty much been the voice of that for a long time, almost independent within the organization itself, as all these other initiatives have been going, so that you see it through a window of view like this, and I speak to this through this window of view. There are thousands of people around the world that see HeartMath as the healthcare thing, or the guys that make that M-Wave thing. It's like they see it as a technology.
They see the science, the technology.
That's right. They see the science and the technology side of what we do, and so blending all that is part of the task, and part of the challenge for us. Is how do we bring all these things together? How do we provide more technology in our training? How do we provide more training into our technology? How do we language this in certain ways that now take it to another level, what's called scalability? How do we reach more mass people with it? And so it's a growing organic process for us, just like for everything else, because we're all going through our changes. And so personally, HeartMath would be as an organization, there's the momentum of change and speed of growth through the shift era affects every living thing, every tree, bush, fish, frog, you name it. If it's living and breathing here, it's going through a shift.
Exactly. Well, tell us about the military. You mentioned you all are working with the military. How does that take place?
We work on two sides. On the for-profit business side, through our health professional division, we work a lot with the military health professionals. They are the professionals that work within military hospitals and Veterans Administration Centers. There's over 50 hospitals, Veterans Administration hospitals, that in some way incorporate HeartMath. The way they're doing it is primarily using the M-Wave, the handheld device that we have, and they're using it to help returning soldiers from Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., with PTSD and things like that. So they're working to try to improve them, their ability to cope with what they're experiencing now as they return back into society. And so that goes on a lot, in that context. On the other side, we're training now, and a training program called the Resilience Advantage was developed for the military, and it's being implemented now through contracts we have with the military. We have a contract with the U.S. Navy. We're training 2,000 new U.S. Navy personnel now. We have another grant-driven program going on with the Kansas National Guard. And these are pre-deployment trainings. So what's different? Now we're training them before they go to where they go to. So it's skill sets, and it's language again, operational efficiency, operational awareness. You know, the techniques are done quicker than the ones I'll teach today because you don't have time to figure out, you know, whether they can feel it in their heart and find a fluffy kitty, right? You know, because they're in the middle of some serious stuff. So they have to shift quick and move quick, and so it's got to be languaged a bit differently. So it's pre-deployment, and then we're working with people who are veterans, people who run veterans, you know, services, things like that. So it's a, you know, we've always respected the military for what they do, you know, taking it out of any judgment about, you know, about war and killing and things like that. To me, that'll all shift over time, but these people are human beings. They have a job. They're trying to do the best they can. That job is stressful. That job is challenging for them. You know, they are doing what they can, the best they can. And if we can help them, equip them to better deal with the challenges that they face as they go into the environments that are beyond our imaginations, and they can help them when they return home to integrate back into a, you know, to a sense of normalcy within their lives as a civilian, then we've done some service. It's a mission, again, of care to help some folks who may have different beliefs, completely different lifestyle than me, but they're doing the best they can from where they're coming from, and we honor that and their service.
So on another note, Global Coherence Initiative, that's huge. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, we talked about some bottom line things here, you know, working with the military, working with the hospitals, improving return on investment, all this sort of stuff. But if you go back to the genesis of HeartMath we talked about earlier, back to these days in Carolina and all, what was that about? You know, that was about a spiritual process for us. It was a spiritual mission. We were young people. We wanted to improve ourselves. We wanted to expand our awareness and consciousness. It was a spiritual thing for us. So about 3 or 4 years ago, with more scientific information now, we began to think about, let's work this from the top down a little bit, because the way I see it working and what this shift is really about, it's a change in the consciousness itself, actually a dimensional shift in the consciousness. And we also have to keep in mind, too, that this is a big shift. We tend to personalize it, but it's just, we're a small part of something much larger. We're the anthropological, is that right? Like,
Don't know.
big help you are.
I'm not the expert.
We're people. Walking around on the surface of something bigger. We're going through our shift. The planet is going through its shift. The solar system is. You know, the galaxy goes on. It's a big shift in consciousness that's happening right now. And so the way I see it working is that consciousness changes at some level in some form. That filters down into sort of how we think and feel, the psychological paradigms. Those psychological paradigms begin to morph. Things like our values, what's important. You know, that goes down into what we think about, what we eat, about what kind of water bottles we use. Things like that begin to change, and that goes into societal structure, and then pretty soon the world looks different. But where does it begin? You know, what's the genesis of that? Well, they feed each other, but to me it happens at a consciousness level, and it filters itself down. So with the Global Coherence Initiative, we decided, let's work it from top down. Let's make a change in the consciousness field that then impacts all these other things that filters down into the new world we create. Now, we formed this organization. It's free. You go to the GL Coherence, I'll say that slower, glcoherence.org website. You can join for free. What you become is a part of a community of people who are joining together to use their heart, focus, care, and intention to affect things in a positive way and to help people through the shift, right? Well, one point I need to make about this, it's just the way Doc would always want us to position things. We're not trying to be the big deal in this movement out there. We're not trying to be the leader of it all and all that. We're trying to do what we do and make our contribution the way we can make it. Because literally there are thousands and thousands of groups around the world right now who are forming together for various reasons in various ways. The internet's given that ability, you know, another huge boost. And they're doing prayers, they're doing meditations, they're doing affirmations, they're doing lots of different things to try to do what Global Coherence Initiative's doing. So we're one of the gang, right? And So we have the organization, you go to the website, you join, membership is free. It is donation-based for people that want to make donations. That's how we fund it, right? It's through donations and things. And we have information there, techniques, scientific information, technical information, webinars and teleseminars and things we've done in the past you can listen to, some suggested techniques for people to help improve their heart coherence and things. But we also make it clear this is not about heart math in a certain way. It's about people and their hearts and however they get there, with whatever belief systems they bring to the table, whatever methods they use. All that's honored. Not trying to say this is a heart math thing, you have to do heart math to be part of this. You don't. The other part we brought to the party is the science, which is the project to begin to measure the effect of mass human emotion on the energetic fields of the Earth itself, and to reinforce and strengthen the academic understanding of our relationship to these fields. And so we have the sensor sites we're putting up around the world. They're relatively expensive. You have to install them, you know, and maintain them and all of that. We have 3 working ones now, 2 more coming very soon, 1 after that. We need eventually 12 to have the system we want. Just exciting because now we're looking at the Earth's geomagnetic and ionospheric fields, which are the Earth's energetic fields, part of the Earth as it is a living system. And we begin to observe those and see what's going on in those fields. Now, one thing I always have to make clear, because people want to believe very quickly, is that this isn't about slapping up a sensor in the backyard. We all stand around it, pray a little bit, and watch a needle move. You know? And say, I see, I knew it. You know? It's more than that. It's a very complex science. And what we're doing with this, the way I think we've done science all along, is that we're being very careful that we do it right. Because too many things can be inferred today with using science as its support system. But that when it hits a certain level of mainstream understanding or mainstream scrutiny, it can easily be written off as pseudoscience because the real proof's not there. So a lot of inference is often made in the spiritual world today, spiritual community, about science. HeartMath is kind of like the conservative liberals in this process. We don't get as phenomenalistic as some. So our research is based upon solid empirical understanding of things, and therefore we fit in okay with the scientific academic communities because we've done the research well. We'll do the same thing with Global Coherence Initiative. These fields are big, they are extremely complex, there are many things that influence them. To get to the point where we can understand how humans are influencing them, it's going to take some time. And that time will be worth it. Because if this hypothesis that we are in fact impacting these fields, and those fields are coming back impacting us, and that we can influence those fields in ways that we benefit, that's a pretty big leap.
Yes, indeed.
In awareness. And if we prove that empirically so that it can't be taken apart, and it will give such substance to the belief system we already have. The way I see science about something like this is we don't have to have it. We believe for thousands of years that when we pray or we meditate that it has an effect. That's why we will pray for someone who's sick, for example. We feel like there's an effect that's having. And that's what's most important. But when something gets tangible and real and you can see it, it takes on another level of power, really. I could describe this table to you, with a cloth over it. I could describe that there's a table here and it's wonderful, pretty wood, and it's got the glass in the middle of it. And it's got this angel sitting on it that's really pretty. Hey, sweetheart. It's got lots of things here. But you can see it. And I can touch it. And by being able to do that, it brings us to another level of reality which makes it more solid and more real and more substantive. So if we can use science to show that our thoughts, our prayers, our meditations, all that is more real than we ever thought. It's like bringing this table from behind the curtain into the forefront, and what that will do, it will add extra power and potency to our prayers, our meditations, all of that. So that's why we're doing the science. But it'll take a little time. So if people listening here today in our venue or who watch this video later want to become part of this grand experiment, certainly encourage you to do so. And be part of the unfolding process. And I have no timetable for when we'll publish results. We are publishing things now or reporting on things relative to the field's influence on us. Solar activity and the influence on the fields, we're correlating to that. We show data every day on what we're seeing on the sensor. What does it mean? We're not sure. We can show data, we can see information, we can see changes in the fields. Are they being caused by human emotion? Or is it solar radiation? Is it cosmic rays? What's going on with all these various things that impact these fields, which are dynamic and changing all the time? So over time, with patience, which is the act of intelligent waiting, we will see what we can unfold. And if we unfold what we think we're going to unfold, it would be a revolutionary discovery.
Well, it's indeed, and that's glcoherence.org.
Say that better than I do.
Well, that's... And what if people want to buy a book or an M-Wave? How would they, is that the same website?
You go to, you can go to one of two websites, HeartMath.com or HeartMath.org. The .com is our for-profit site, the .com is our non-profit site. The non-profit site has a lot more generic information and free things if you want to really get into the M-Wave and get into the organizational training programs and heart mastery, which I mentioned earlier, how you can learn these heart skills for yourself over time, the self-paced learning system, interacting with us via the telephone and things like that. That would be HeartMath.com. So either of those sites, explore them both. Go to glcoherence.org to tap right into the Global Coherence Initiative and become a part of, of what we're doing. We're all sort of doing everything we can, I'm sure, to do our part in this era that we've generically called a shift. I think the most important thing we can do, which I said earlier, is to have more compassion right now. Changes are going to occur whether we like it or not. The shift is happening whether we like it or not. What we can control is how hard or easy this is on ourselves and on people. And the love and the care we put out, the compassion that we extend to others, can soften some things and take the rough edges off of some things and make this transition a little easier than it could be. Because it's going to go down one way or another. It's a bigger shift than us. We're in the middle of it. And our role, I think, as servers and people that are involved in spiritual practice, one of our primary roles is to make the changes we need to make on our inside and make that the primary thing that we do. That's the biggest contribution we can make to the shift. And in the process of that, put out more care, compassion, understanding, and latitude for others. And let's see if we can make this all as smooth as possible and end up on the other side in a new world that we've never seen before.
Sounds fantastic. Wow. Awesome. Well, Howard, would you mind to take a few questions?